Check, check, check. Good evening, friends and neighbors. I'm glad to be here with you today. My name is Kim Roney, and I'm running for mayor of our city of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm a small business owner, music educator, community organizer, friend and neighbor, and one of my students is here today. I just want to say thank you for holding me accountable to a hopeful future, working together. Why am I running? I see as our community has so many folks struggling to make ends meet, while a hotel industry and for-profit development off the rails burdens our infrastructure, extracts our natural resources, and displaces our vulnerable neighbors. But I know that I have a lot of neighbors like you who care, and I want us to see us build our professional, lived experience together to work towards solutions that I know we can achieve together. I know that we can do meaningful work around affordability, making sure that we build affordable housing but also keep people housed. That we can address public safety in a way that diversifies our public safety response, making sure we're sending the right person with the right tools and training for the task at hand. And I'm running on an open meetings policy because it is the role of the mayor to make sure that the public's work is done in public, as has been articulated by Nina Tobish. Neighborhood resiliency. I brought that to the council's strategic priorities. It was supported by Vice Mayor Smith, and it is why it is a top 6 priority of council that impacts the budget. Resiliency means the capacity to recover quickly through difficulties to spring back into shape. I bring neighborhood resiliency to the table because I know that we can keep each other safe if our neighborhoods have what we need to take care of each other during times of crisis, and that strong neighborhoods across the city can work together to help us achieve our aspirational goals while addressing the historic and current disparities around race and class. I am very honored to be here in Asheville, North Carolina, the home of my great-grandparents, where my great-grandmother was born in Kenilworth. My great-grandparents were doctors here with the Cherokee and Enigetawagi people, and I feel the responsibility to take better care of each other on the planet, but I can't do it by myself. I'm asking you to send me from one hot seat to another because I believe that we can do it together, and I'm committed to a process that allows us to do that. Thank you.
Okay, we have 2 missing souls, Commissioner candidate Edwards and Mayor Manheimer. So we're a moment or 2 ahead of schedule. Housekeeping. I am afraid to count the number of people who are in here because I fear we may have exceeded the fire marshal limit. The people who are in front of the doors cannot stay there. You either need to find a seat if there is one, or you need to move to the side walls. We just cannot run the risk of this whole wonderful thing coming to an end because we're blocking the doors and the exits. In hindsight, I should have had somebody out front counting people.
There's a chair right here, it's not a chair.
And we would have unfortunately had to turn some of you away. So, while you're all rearranging yourselves so that there's fire exit, I still see people over in front of the exit on the left. That cannot be the case. We have some more room up to the front on the left. I know it's not perfect seating capability.
We got plenty of room here behind, just run them to a vehicle.
Okay, please don't sneak back to the doors, just stay where you can. Okay, so here's what's going to happen next. We have prescribed questions that we've collected in advance. We're going to go category by category. So the same question will be asked of all of the members of council, all the members of the commission, the sheriff. Something's not great with my mic, sorry.
Make sure everything's pushed in.
The screen will show the question. I'll read it for the first answerer. And then when their 3 minutes is up or they stop, then it'll move on to the next slide, which will have the name. I picked everybody at random, so somebody will go first, somebody will go last, and we'll sort of sort that around as we go. So this is the first question. Where would you get the money to cover the notorious maintenance deficit? Okay, and Maggie, you're first, and you can start now.
Oh, goodness. Wrong earrings. Where would I get the money? Well, I think that one of the things we need to be looking at when it comes to maintenance is how we are pursuing maintaining stuff. Not long ago in our history, we didn't borrow much money, right? So the way that we are financing the things that we are trying to fund is evolving and needs to continue to evolve. We have a AAA bond rating, so that gives us the potential to leverage borrowed money in a better and more effective way. I also think that with the growth of our community, that does mean that we're getting more revenue, but I don't think that that will come anywhere near covering the cost of the growing maintenance that we need. When I think about maintenance, you need to think about it in kind of different funding buckets, right? So water maintenance is funded by itself through fees. Stormwater maintenance is funded by itself through fees, the way that the law is written. So when we look at road maintenance, that is a thing that is from the general fund and that we all pay as taxpayers. So we need to be looking at maximizing big maintenance projects with federal and state money and local money. That's the first place I'd look when it comes to that type of maintenance. We've done a lot of very big projects in the last 10 years. Think of the River District, through leveraging the taxes you're paying to the local government with resources we can get through the state and federal. Right now, with the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the Climate Bill, there is about to be a lot of federal resources for local and state governments specifically to look at things like our transportation infrastructure. And I think that's a place in the very near future we have to hop on right away to plug some of the gaps.
Nia.
I know it's bad form to say ditto, but I have to agree a lot with what Maggie just said. I would add a couple of other thoughts there. She mentioned the Inflation Reduction Act. People have forgotten that about 5 or 6 months ago, we had the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and that has a very large sum of money which will trickle down through states down to the local, county, and municipal levels. And Asheville should be all over that in terms of making sure that those resources. I live in a neighborhood where we've had 6 major water breaks within a 4-block radius. All the pipes are giving up the ghost simultaneously. And there's specific money in the infrastructure bill precisely for the repair and upgrade of what's now 60, 75, 80-year-old infrastructure. We should make sure that we're asking for those funds in a timely manner so that we can plan to make the best use of them as they come down the pipeline to us. There's a stigma associated with borrowing money, but we do have an excellent bond rating, and for the kinds of investments that pay dividends for our community, these are investments that are worth making because they will support not only our local residents, but also our local business people. One of the things I'd like to see City Council do is make more proactive programs to support local businesses, because unlike large corporations, or national corporations, or chain businesses, the people who run local businesses pay the people who work with them living wages because they know how costly it is to live here in Asheville. And their profits stay in our community. It builds the wealth of our entire community. It helps our city thrive. So we should be putting effort into sustaining and building up our local entrepreneurial folks, both the people who are brewing beer, but also our creative sector, which serves all of us extremely well, and also our other small businesses who provide the services that we all use every day.
Thank you. Andrew.
So I want to do some yes and because I haven't heard any bad ideas up here. If we actually had the will at council currently, a lot of this stuff could already been done. But I am going to point out a couple things that haven't been mentioned yet. One of which is that we're all individuals in this room. We all get a water bill from the city, if you're a City of Asheville water bill customer. But did you know that the rate for the largest consumers of water is exactly half of what the rate is for you and I? That is a heck of a lot of money that's being left on the table, and a lot of those consumers of water sell that water, sometimes in the form of beer and things like this. So they've got they're not just taking showers and cooking with it, you know, and sustaining their lives. They have a business model selling our water and they get a discount for it. We could recapture some of that income by having a more fair water rate system to be able to invest in our local maintenance. That is a big thing. A couple other things that we could do, that I'm gonna add on to what I've already heard. First off, Asheville is an incredible driver of commerce in Buncombe County. Yet, when the sales tax on every single purchase in Asheville goes to Raleigh and comes back and gets split up, we don't get our fair share. We get less of the money that is spent here coming back to us for us to spend on our needs. And so that is something that I think our colleagues at the county could help with us, have a better split, because we're all citizens of the city here, or some of us are citizens of the city, and we're all residents of the county as well. So we need to be able to work with the county to better address the needs of those folks that are residents of both entities. Another thing that we can do, and you're gonna hear me say this a lot on the campaign trail, is that right now, just the news item of the week, $1.3 million spent in New York at the US Open from the hotel taxes that are generated here. $1.3 million of money that is sent elsewhere. And we need to have leaders. Now, the law can't change locally, but I want to hear from all of our leaders join us in saying that we deserve a better deal from the Tourism Development Authority and from those hotel taxes to keep that money at home. We can argue about what to do with it later, but the first thing we got to do is keep that money at home so we can have the resources to pay for the cost of tourism. And I think that is what I would really bring on top of what I've already heard here today.
Thank you. Allison?
You know, it's not always great to go last, because when you're with and running with, not against, with a lot of very qualified, smart people, they say a lot of the same things you believe. And I've been with the 4 people here for a while, so I do agree with a lot of things they say. But I do have an additional take on this. You see, before I worked for a nonprofit, I worked in the corporate world, something a lot of people don't know about me, for over a decade. And I can tell you, looking at budgets and understanding how it works, that was always the first thing on the job. And when you go to address where do you get the money, one of the first places you go is you look at the budget and you see, why is the money being spent the way it is? And how do we go about addressing that? Then also, where do we find additional money? And part of that is AAA bonds, you know, is borrowing that money with our great credit rating. But part of it is also just making people pay their way. We don't do that right now. Right now, today, the TDA takes a huge portion of our funds. And it has been said, Asheville City Council can't change it. Actually, Buncombe County Commissioners, they are the ones who set the hotel occupancy tax. They could choose to set it to 0. And I'm not throwing them under the bus. And that's why we need people that can work together. I've already started talking with 2 county commissioners and others that if we can't get our state legislators to agree to change the TDA allowance and allow us to make tourism not work against us but for us, then we should shut it down. That is not fair for people to come in this town, use the roads, the water, the sewers, everything we use, and not have to pay for it at the same rate we do. And we can do that. I know how to do that. I recently was part of a team to help get the city of Asheville, the Buncombe County, and over 20 other municipalities in this state to pass a non-discrimination ordinance for LGBTQ advocacy. We did that by banding together and making sure the state legislators knew we would not back down until we got what we wanted. Asheville can't stand by itself. We have to start talking to other cities, the Asheville City Council, the Buncombe County Commissioners. We all need to work together. It goes back to resiliency, and that's a big part of why I'm running.
Thank you. Okay, second question for city council members. What steps would you take to clean up the city and increase safety? And Andrew, you're first.
Well, this has been a big thing on a lot of people's minds, and I know I've just seen the overall feeling of safety in my neighborhood erode as well, so I'm experiencing it too. However, I have seen for decades that the police department has sucked up every single bit of money for public safety, and they can't always prove, I think. They don't always have to prove that they are the best recipient for public safety money, when there are other solutions that are out there that have results proven in other cities, data for it, and they're screaming for funding. And we're not really funding them. We treat this police department like a Swiss Army knife, and it works about as well for the many problems that we ask them to look at. There is a role for the police department, however, we're not using them correctly, and we need to be shifting some of that money into other solutions that are actually proven to work. You ever notice that the Air Force always thinks that they need another bomber? They always get it. The police department also, they do the same thing. They ask for more money and they get it, and they don't always prove that they're the best recipient of public safety funds. And so I'd like to see a more competitive process for how we decide how to fund public safety. And I think that honors our neighbors in equity, and I think that honors everybody who is experiencing the changes in the city. And I'll also say that there is a national trend of this, and solutions very widely have been tried, and there has not been a lot that has changed as far as different policing tactics from city to city, Republican cities, Democratic cities. There hasn't been a lot of difference. And I think that's because we need to look beyond policing and try to do some other things. And also, when it comes to just clean up in the city, well, we have a lot of people who don't live here, and they treat our city like a theme park. And again, getting tourism to pay for tourism is a big part of what we need to do if we're gonna have a future that doesn't look like Disneyland here. This is gonna be a city with people who live in it and work in it. We need to get tourism to pay for itself. Because I think I can say this for all of us, we're sick of paying for tourism. And that is a big thing that we need to do. We need to capture those tourism dollars while they're here and spend it on the cost of tourism, because it's not free. And we're not doing a good job of capturing that money now, and the TDA is a part of that.
Thank you. Allison.
You know, this is one of those great questions where I wish somebody could ask me, and then I could ask you some follow-up questions. And I don't have the ability to do that right now, so I have to make some assumptions. And those assumptions are based off of talks I've had with people in the communities. When I hear people say, clean up the city and increase safety, you know, we can sit here and we can talk about a lot of different things. The city council does not manage the Asheville Police Department. That is the city manager's job. The city manager does work for the Asheville City Council, and the council sets the direction of the city. And I know people, when I hear people talking about safety, they talk about the over 30 shootings we've had this year alone. That's a record historic number. And that is a big part of when people say they're afraid to go walking at night or they're afraid to go somewhere. And not everyone shares those same feelings, because when you talk about safety, it can mean a lot of different things. It can mean, does your stuff get broken into in your car with petty crime? Does the stuff on your back porch get rifled through? Or does, when you're driving down the street, do you see people undergoing the most difficult times of their life, living out of their cars, out of the sidewalks, or anything else? Is that what you mean by cleaning it up and addressing safety? I think it means a little of all of those things. And I think that's why we have to address this in a lot of different ways. We have to think about helping our neighbors, because if people have jobs and they have housing, they don't commit crime. They don't have to commit crime. If we help them with their substance abuse, they don't commit crime. We have to commit to that as a community and as a city. And it's one of the things I want to bring to this.
Thank you. Maggie?
Okay, what steps would I take to clean up the city and increase safety? I appreciate where you're going with that, Allison, of like, what do we mean by safety? I think, you know, I'm a bike rider. Does that mean transportation? I think in our community, it does mean around crime a lot of times. I think when I'm talking with folks, I've knocked on 750 doors and I hear safety a lot, and I hear it connected to the unhoused people on our streets. So I'll talk to a couple of those. I'll tell you an experience I had. My mother-in-law, Joe, can vouch for this. About a year ago, my husband came home at 5:30 on a Sunday afternoon and someone was actively robbing our house. You know who I'm really glad showed up? The police. I think that we have a really complicated relationship with the police in our community and in America. I know that we're down 40% of our police department. This is a once in a city's lifetime opportunity to reset the culture to be even stronger, healthier, and safer for our community when we rehire those positions. We need to have police that can respond. As Andrew mentioned, well, he didn't say it this way, but we also have only been looking at that one tool in our toolbox to address community safety. We wouldn't build a house only with a hammer. So what are other types of programs, whether they're already piloting or we could expand into? The community paramedic program that our county commissioners have led and leaned on, where if you call 911, someone with a gun can be dispatched or someone with a doctor kit. I think things like that are definitely places we need to be looking at for a safer community. I also wanted to talk, about the unhoused. I think there's a big conversation in our community we just need to fundamentally have about the unhoused and is that unsafe fundamentally. I fully believe that I and all of us are one step away from being someone on the street. I just think that's the systems we live in. I think that's the society we're at right now. So if I start with that in my heart of like, man, this is the worst point in your life and I see you on my sidewalk and out in my community, I have to start with that. How are we gonna solve this as a people together? And I think that we need to be addressing it much more aggressively. The number of our regularly unhoused folks has gone up from around 500 to around 600 just in the last year. That's a really big increase. Something different is happening. When I talk with the police force and folks who work in nonprofit communities working with the unhoused, one of the first things I hear, anyone wanna guess? Meth. I hear that there's a dramatic increase in methamphetamine use right now, so the drug cycles that are happening and resulting in people on our sidewalks, we need to be looking at those bigger systems of change. Concisely in my last second, I'll say that I think a role that the city can lean into further and more aggressively is to bring together all of us who care about this. Who here has done something at a shelter before? We're here, we're doing stuff, right? And so how can we bring all the voices together at the same time? Thank you. Sorry, I get excited.
Nina.
Clean up the city and increase safety. One thing that no one's mentioned yet, and again, I would like to say I'm hearing a lot of things that I would also echo, is no one's talked about, we've talked about the low levels of police staffing, but we haven't talked about the low levels of city service worker staffing. We are shorthanded. We are shorthanded in sanitation. I don't know whether any of you have had the opportunity to get downtown and go to some of the wonderful festivals that we had, like Goombay recently last weekend. Fantastic opportunity to see the wealth of wonderful creativity and entrepreneurship in our city. But all of the trash bins were overflowing and people were trying to be responsible about discarding their food containers and their trash, and they weren't able to do it because everything was overflowing. There was a dumpster bin that was also completely overflowing. This is the symptom of a city that has lost staff for a combination of reasons. Some of it is out of our control. We had a pandemic, we had a lot of people who left or departed, and you know, it's hard. We also are not paying people as well as we could as a city. If you want people to do those hard, difficult jobs, you have to pay them right. You have to not just pay them a bare minimum wage, you have to pay them a decent, life-enhancing wage. So I think that a lot of what passes as, oh, the city is ugly, it's a mess, it's dirty, could be addressed by better staffing at the city level. The other side of the coin that I want to address and echo is also the concern about our unhoused neighbors, the people who are homeless in the street. There's a totally understandable reaction of fear and concern, and perhaps, as Maggie suggested, a little bit of the "there but for the grace of God go I." It's scary, it's intimidating. We don't want our families to feel encroached upon. We can't solve all these problems on the local level. Our national federal safety net has seriously eroded. Our cost of living here is very high. What we can do is mitigate, and we need to be looking for creative solutions through pilot programs that are budget delimited, personnel delimited, and time delimited to try some new ways of helping people get into shelter and transition to permanent housing. I have a bunch of ideas about this. I'm happy to share them with you. Check out my website, tobishforavl.com, for more of that kind of stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, third question. Last question for city council members. What steps would you take to preserve Asheville's tree canopy? Allison, you're up first.
Stop cutting down trees. It's a no-brainer. This one baffles me, and I almost get a little irritated by it. Not at the question, but at the response that we've seen. The first thing we do is we look at developments, we look for where the tree canopy is, and it's almost like we're going for it. We want to put in a substation, we look for where the tree canopy is, we almost go for it. I don't know how it's happening exactly, but I can tell you, I want to put an end to it. I believe that we can grow, we can be responsible, and we can do it in a way that preserves the trees, preserves the area, makes us climate resilient, and helps our neighborhoods live and thrive. You cannot tear down buildings and housing to build more housing for people that can't afford to live here already. It can't. We are destroying ourselves by taking this ludicrous approach to developing our city. We need to do it smart, and we need to do it in a balanced way. And I think when we look at tree canopy, we need to hire the city forest manager. That's a huge deal. It needed to happen years ago. And so things like this will be some of the first things that I want to push from day one, because we've got catching up to do. And when you look around town and you see how much of the tree canopy we've already cut down, we're behind. We have to stop and put the brakes on this right now and really look at this going forward and measuring it from a community first and environment first approach instead of a business, tourism, or big industry or Duke Power first approach. We need to put our citizens first, we need to put our environment first, and I will do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Andrew?
I remember when I was a kid, I'd always get afraid when my dad got out the chainsaw because I knew he was going on a rampage and he wanted to clear some land. It was from that age I realized that the time that it takes to watch a tree grow is more than a lifetime for many of these trees. And the damage that we've already done to the tree canopy is not something that we can just repair. We got to do it for the next generation, but it's really not even something that we can do for us because the damage has already been done. And so I feel really strongly about this issue. I live right behind the Clingman Wood. My quality of life is greatly enhanced by having a forest right in the backyard. Even when the raccoons and the possums and the bears are a little inconvenient, I'll still take it. What I have noticed though is that for a very long time, we've been electing so-called environmental candidates that have overseen the destruction of 900 acres of the tree canopy in Asheville. I don't really understand how people in Asheville feel like they've been electing environmental candidates for so long. But this is the result we've gotten. It seems that they're all for it until a developer wants to use it. Oh, and then, well, just this one time. Again and again and again. And now with the Lexington Avenue stuff, I see all you guys folks are out here well organized about this. This is a deeply offensive issue to the city of Asheville. Losing what makes our place the green, beautiful place that I love to live in. Trying to make it look like Charlotte. Well, I didn't move to Charlotte for a reason. I like it here. I want to stay here. And I want the trees to stay here too. I don't know why. The community's been calling out for an urban forester for how long, and just now, this year, we get it? It doesn't seem to be a priority to the current administration. So I'm gonna ask you guys to look for some new faces, and I'm hoping that I'm gonna be one of them, because I'm gonna be serious about this issue. Because my friends don't have anything to gain when the trees come down. I don't have developer friends. I don't work in that industry. I live here, I work here, and I want to keep what is great about this place. I'm serious about that. Thank you.